students, the purpose of this video is to help you to review sections 2.1 through 2.4. So in these sections, we've been focused on linear equations. Linear equations. And linear equations are one type of special function that creates a perfect line. And each of our straight lines, they can have different slopes. So when we've learned about slope, we said that slope just refers to the steepness of a line. So you may have a line that goes up, as you see the one that I drew there, or maybe something a little less steep. It's not as inclined. You could even have something that has a negative slope. So now you're going downward instead of upward. And in our notes, we've talked about slope being represented universally in math as the letter M. And if you're going to have to calculate the slope, you're going to take y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So in several of our other videos, we looked at having two coordinate points where we had to go and find its slope. Now, in addition to slope, there's another important term that we want to feel comfortable with, and that's something called the Y-intercept. Y-intercept is a special point on our graph, and it is simply the point that crosses the y-axis. And universally in math, we represent the y-intercept using the letter B. So the letter M and B are very useful for us because these are the common variables that we are going to try to find if we're not given, so that we can write the equation of a line. So that brings me to, what does the format of the equation of a line look like? Well, there's different ways we've learned to write it, and one of them is something called slope-intercept form. This is the most common way we write the equation of a line. And it's represented by y equals mx plus b, where m represents our slope and b represents our y-intercept value. Keep in mind that m and b are the only values that will have numbers in place of their variables, whereas y and x will stay y and x in that final formula that you write. Okay? So, some other things to think about. Point slope form. Point slope form. Point slope form is another way to write the equation of a line. It's also useful in getting you the equation, and we represent that by y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. And so again, that can be another type of equation that we utilize in order to find the equation of a line. And the last format that I want you to feel comfortable and remember is something called standard form. Standard form is represented by ax plus by is equal to c. So all of these formats are very useful. They all help us to find the equation of our line. We use them in different instances. You want to make sure you feel comfortable with all of these. And so just to get an idea of like, why am I learning this? Because remember, 143 is all about the application. So it's great. Like, we're learning a lot of algebra right now, but why? Well, the whole point to linear functions and the whole point to slope is that we are trying to look at something called rate of change. So we are trying to evaluate from one point to another point. How are things changing over time? What exactly is occurring? Okay? So with that being said, let's look at some pictures and think about some context. So let's say I have, let's do it this way. Let's say I have a graph like this. I'm going to actually hold that thought for 1 second, and I'm going to bring up something else. I just want to make sure I re-emphasize that there are the two special points. We've already talked about this one, the y-intercept, because it is the point that is on the y-axis. And the other one that I didn't mention is the x-intercept, and this is the point that crosses the x-axis, okay? Now, going back to the y, so we can have lines that look like this. We can have lines that look like this. We can have perfectly up and down lines, and we can have perfectly side to side lines. And again, the idea is we're trying to see from point to point what exactly is that rate of change. Now, we already gave the formula of slope, but another way to think about slope is rise over run. That's normally the way we talk about it when we are using words. And rise just means what is the changes in y's versus the changes in x's. So when you look at this, you're thinking about, okay, how much do I have to go up versus how much do I have to go over? And this represents a slope that is going to be a positive number. Whereas this one requires me to start going down in respect to my y's and then over. So this is going to represent a slope that is a negative number. Now this slope requires me to go up a certain number, so I'm just going to put a number, right, because it will vary from graph to graph, but I don't have to go over anything. I don't ever run. And in math, when 0 is in the denominator of a fraction, we remember or we recall that that is not a good thing, and that represents undefined. So every vertical line has an undefined slope. And then to get from this point to this point, we don't have to rise, we just have to run. And so we have 0 over a number. And anytime we have 0 in the numerator of a fraction, it automatically equals 0. So every horizontal line has a slope of 0. Okay? All right, so that is a pretty good review. I'm going to stop this video here. I will offer one more video for review that is going to assist you with some problems, and then we'll talk a little bit about 2.4. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day as always.